Hey, you ever notice how the story of Liberia gets told in the simplest way possible? Like it was founded by free slaves from America and that's it? But the real story? Way deeper, way older, and way more complicated than anyone ever says. Long before ships from the United States touched the Liberian coast, the land was already home to powerful indigenous nations. Nations like the Vai, the Kru, the Gola, the Bassa, the Mano, the Geo, and the Grebo, and others. These were organized societies with their own governments, their own trade systems, and their own spiritual traditions. And in the case of the Vai, they even had their own writing system. These weren't small, scattered tribes, they were nations. Europeans first reached Liberia in the 1400s, but they never managed to take the land the way they did in other parts of West Africa. The indigenous nations pushed them out repeatedly. The Kru, they were especially known for resisting any type of control. So the coast stayed indigenous for centuries. And then the 1800s came and the American Colonization Society formed in the United States. A lot of the people in this group were politicians and slaveholding families who didn't want a large population of free Black people living in America. So their solution was to relocate them somewhere else. So they targeted the coast of West Africa and eventually secured a piece of land at Cape Mesurado. Between the 1820s and the Civil War era, thousands of Black people from the United States, including many who were actually indigenous people, indigenous Americans, that had been reclassified as Negro or colored or mulatto, they were transported to what would become Liberia. These settlers, called Americano-Liberians, brought U.S. customs with them, English names, Christianity, Western clothing, and a government modeled after the United States. And this was where the real tension began. When settlers arrived, they believed they were creating their own new nation. But the indigenous nations who were already there, they had their own systems, their own land, their own sovereignty. For decades, the two sides clashed. Sometimes through treaties, through conflict, even through uneasy cooperation. Americano-Liberians eventually formed a political class that dominated the government for more than a century. While indigenous groups kept fighting for recognition, land rights, and political inclusion, Liberia declared independence in 1847. It became the first Black-led republic of the modern era. But the story didn't end there. The power imbalance continued way into the 20th century until a coup in 1980 shifted the political landscape entirely. After years of turmoil and civil conflict, Liberia has been rebuilding itself with new leadership and a new direction. So when people talk about Liberia like it was just created out of thin air by the United States, they're leaving out the most important truths. That indigenous nations were already there. That many of the people sent from America weren't migrants by choice. That the two worlds collided and blended, and that Liberia's identity comes from a mixture of indigenous West Africans, Black Americans, and reclassified American Indians. Centuries of resistance, survival, and reinvention. That's the real story. The one that finally needed to be told.